All right, so this Uvalde, let's get into the Uvalde shooting stuff. Let me just say that I know I get angry a lot, but this is probably the most disgusting, enraging, and like, what's the word for it? There's a word for the feeling. It just feel like I can already start to feel my chest drop, like acid churning, but also like there's a hole where your heart should be. It was one of the most. It was. I mean, apoplectic doesn't even start to do it, but it also like affects you. It affects you deeply because I think when I saw this video that there was some element of me somewhere deep inside that hadn't fully reckoned with the reality. So if this kind of stuff is too much for you, I totally get it. But I was raging about Uvalde when it was happening. It was clear, my rhetoric on it was that the cops were cowards and they should be. I honestly think they should be tried for voluntary manslaughter. I think every cop that was in there should be in prison for the rest of their lives. I know a lot of people here are anarchist-leaning prison abolitionists, but I don't think that you can have people with a license to kill in a society, and then they just stand around with their thumbs up their asses while children are screaming for over an hour. There's just no, that's not redeemable. That type of person is just not redeemable. So let's get going. Again, I warn you, this is very, 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 very shitty. This is probably one of the worst things I've ever seen. I've seen really terrible shit. And this is probably one of the worst. And from what I understand, the Austin, the newspaper that decided to release this with other media, the Austin Statesman, actually edited it to make it less bad. They edited it to make it less bad and they tell you they did because it was so. All right, let's go.
The Austin American-Statesman has obtained video footage that allegedly the Uvalde County District Attorney did not want us to see. It is surveillance footage, body cam footage of the Robb Elementary School as the mass shooting was taking place on campus, and it shows what the police response was. Okay, so it's a 77-minute long recording. We're gonna show you a few clips from it. You're not gonna see anything graphic in it, although you will hear some gunshots. I just wanted to give you that warning. And it just sheds more light on the incompetence and cowardice of the police who were there on the scene. I wanna start off by saying that the gunman actually started firing his weapon when he was outside of the school. And even though there were cops on the scene who could have stopped him at the time, no one fired their weapon at him. No one stopped him as he was entering the campus.
Now, here's the thing to understand. Every single thing about I feared for my life from cops, we now know is a total fucking lie. You'll see what it looks like when the police actually think somebody has a gun versus the way they act when they shoot a black man in the back. They walk out in the middle of the street shooting someone like versus when they think there's a gun that might fire back at them. They hide. They run away. They cower. You'll see what a cop fearing for their life looks like. And let me tell you, it isn't the way that they gun down so many people. A cop, they love to smash peaceful protesters. This is why America, and I gotta say this is gonna be my hottest take yet, but prepare yourself. I actually think that a lot of people, that Americans are completely wrong about what kind of protest works. Americans have this kind of mythos about nonviolent protest is what did it. It got the civil rights movement. So every protest should be nonviolent, should comply with all police, should stay within all spray painted lines, should stand in the free speech zone. And it's like, that's not how protest works in many other countries. Disruption is part of it. Property damage happens. That's part of it. I don't, And the way the police act towards peaceful protests in America is utterly violent.
Now, with that said, in the next video, you're going to hear the teacher call 911 as she sees the gunman entering the school. She's also urging the students to get to their classrooms for safety. Let's watch.
I can't see him. I cannot see him. The kids are running. Oh my God. Get in your room. Get in your room.
So as you watch that, I want you to remember there were already police officers on the scene. And based on what we've already learned through previous reports, they decided not to shoot at him. They decided to just stand by as he shot his weapon and ran into the school.
Yeah. So this story, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, got way worse. Because I remember we covered, I think it was last week, the story that there was a police sniper that had a shot at the gunman before he went into the high school, and he was looking for an order to shoot, right? And he didn't receive one, so he didn't shoot. But I thought at the time, to be fair to that guy, I mean, do you know for sure that the guy's a gunman? Do you know for sure that he's gonna go in and do something wrong? He hasn't shot anybody yet, right? So it makes sense to wait for a commanding officer to tell you to take him out. I get it. It sucks and it turned out to be a disaster, but I get it. No, it turns out the guy had started shooting into the school before he went in. And they had the shot and they didn't take it.
They didn't take it.
I mean, my God, how many times have we shown you cops killing, let's be honest, mainly black guys, unarmed.
As they're running away.
As they're running away
Shooting
with
him in
no
the back,
weapons.
yeah.
I mean, a million scenarios where they put, I mean, recently they just put 60 bullets in one guy. Turns out he didn't even have a weapon. There's a guy shooting into a school with kids and they don't take the shot. And then they sit around inside the school. We got more on that.
Yeah, that, I have to say.
And the thing is, you know, there's this shooting, there's a famous bank robbery that happened in LA where there was these two guys that got full body armor, ballistic helmets, body armor. They had AK-47s, and the police, the LAPD at the time, they only had shotguns and pistols, right? And they were ineffective on these guys, right? You know, the pistol rounds couldn't, penetrate their body armor. You know, the police didn't have enough equipment. They ended up going to a local gun store and loading up on rifles there, eventually taking the guys out, right? So like that's an example. Like, oh, the police, you know, they were fighting, they were outgunned. You know, very famous incident. You've probably even seen it. But that's not the case at Uvalde. In Uvalde, every single Uvalde police officer had tier 3 body armor, which was designed to stop rifle rounds. They had ballistic helmets. They had ARs themselves. They had ballistic shields. They had breaching tools to go through walls and doors, sledgehammers. They had some other, they had all the equipment you could possibly have. They had all the training you could possibly have. They had just had training like a couple weeks ago in Uvalde school, the elementary school. Was it tier 4 body armor? Yeah, tier 4, excuse me. They had literally everything. The North Hollywood shootout. Yes, thank you, Soon 219. And they sat around and hid. They hid behind their shields as children scream. It's beyond belief. It's beyond belief. And the thing is, they knew, or they suspected that it might be some of their kids. It was their school, their elementary school. That's the thing that's mind-boggling. You know, I could almost understand. I can't understand it, honestly. I was going to say something, but I can't understand it. I legitimately can't understand it. I can't understand. I was going to say something like, well, you know, if you're not part of a community, you might be, you know, but I couldn't. It makes no sense. And again, to remind you, chat, this was a 18-year-old who bought the gun like a week prior. who bought his guns legally like a week prior.
Hey, I have to say the video is so infuriating because you see them. There's a moment where one of them literally, like they're in the hallway. The gunman he's in the classroom, active shooter situation in the classroom. You see one of the cops like put hand sanitizer in his hand and like just casual, like they're so casual. You're gonna see more of it. So why don't we actually get to the first graphic here? Because I want you to see, this is just a still frame from the surveillance footage that the Austin American-Statesman obtained. You see how heavily armed they are, right? Like that visual is everything. Like they're there, they're on the scene. They have their weapons pointed to the classroom, but they're not doing anything. They're scrambling for keys to open the classroom. They didn't even attempt to open the door. It was unlocked, as we've now learned. It's mind-blowing. But with that said, I want to go to the next clip because here you're gonna see, it's terrifying. The gunman has already entered the school. He's firing his weapon. And then a student who had been in the bathroom turns the corner and sees him. So let's keep our mics up. Let's take a look at this video. So there's the gunman, he's walking toward the classroom. And then you can see on the left-hand side, there's a young student who comes around the corner as the gunman walks down the hall. Gunman starts firing his weapon, student runs away. At this point, the gunman fires his AR-15 inside 2 classrooms for 2.5 minutes. Authorities say more than 100.
And now, chat, remember, there were 4 or 5 police officers already there. There were 4 or 5 police officers already there at this point. They hid. At a certain point, there were 19 police officers in the hallway. They didn't go in.
Rounds were fired. So again, it's not like there were no cops on the scene. There were cops on the scene. I don't know what the fate of that little boy was. I think he's okay, but imagine how terrifying that is to be a student dealing with that.
Yeah, this goes to knock down another excuse, which was they thought it was a barricade situation, kind of like a hostage situation. That's where you're supposed to take your time and talk the guy out of it because you don't want him to shoot the hostages. But as it turns out, he's actively firing in the school and the cops are in the school. So if he's actively firing, you have to go in immediately. Because the point of a hostage situation is you don't want him to start firing. If you barrel in, he might start firing. But if he's already firing, you got nothing left to lose except, of course, your own safety.
Yeah.
And that's what the heart of the problem is. And so look.
Well, see, this is the cowardice of American. This is why American police have to be abolished. Because the culture is rotten. Nobody who's worked in policing in America should be allowed to work in policing again. We need to throw them out completely. And we need to go invite trainers from Portugal, from Norway or somewhere to come in and train up an entire new generation of police. And all those former police have to be barred from ever working again as cops, ever, or security guards or anything, period. There has to be a complete clean break, a purge, so to speak. You need public safety to be completely redone from the ground up. You know, America doesn't even solve half of our murders. Norway, they solve 99% of murders, sometimes 100%. Our country spends an untold amount of money and we don't solve the crimes. It's insanity. We are never fixing policing, I'm afraid. Part of what's wrong with Americans, and I'm not calling you out in particular, I'm just saying that your feeling is one of despair and cynicism. I call it stupid cynicism, quite frankly. There's 2 types of cynicism in the world. There's smart cynicism and there's stupid cynicism. Smart cynicism is, okay, a politician is saying something. Who funds their campaign? Where are they from? What's their education? What's their background? What are they going to do when they get into office? What are their incentives when they're there? That's intelligent cynicism. That's understanding power. And then there is what you, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I hate to rip you apart, but you are expressing stupid cynicism, which is just a statement of, nothing's going to change. Nothing can change. We're going to lose. It's over. That's dumb cynicism. It's not, I mean, quite frankly. Now, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because when you express that idea, oh, nothing can change, nothing will change, nothing will get better, blah, 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 you make it happen. You create space for the people in the status quo to survive because they don't feel the heat. Never. And this, if I have one thing I want to teach this audience, one thing, never lose your outrage. Never lose your anger. Never lose your sense of justice. No matter what life throws at you, you should have the energy to be pissed. If it's wrong, it's wrong. The moment you just shrug your shoulders and say, that's the way the world is, you're halfway to being a conservative. Because that's the essence of conservatism. Yeah, it's wrong, but that's the way the world is. That's the essence of a conservative. That is the organizing mental brain of a conservative. So the moment you go, well, that's just the way it is, nothing's going to change, we're never going to do X thing we could easily do, then you're halfway to becoming a conservative yourself. Saying we're fucked, why bother is literally the goal of conservative politics. You're just as valuable for a conservative. The actual goal of conservative politics is to say that the status quo is the best possible world. The essence of a conservative is the world that we're in now is the best possible world, and any attempt to change it will make it worse. Oh, you think that we should tax billionaires to provide health care for children? Well, what happens is you're going to destroy the economy, and more children are going to starve or need health care and are not going to get it. Your attempt to make the world better is actually going to destroy the little good that exists. That's what conservatives believe. And once you start thinking like that, you are on the path. My parents do this all the time and use it as justification to haul out any government usefulness. And they remark how they don't like me bring up hard topics to say everything will be okay, like that does anything. You have to understand that the boomer generation is the fairy tale generation. They say to themselves all sorts of fairy tale, embarrassing, childlike shit so they could avoid dealing with reality. One of the things they'll say is the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. That is the dumbest, most incorrect statement that has ever existed. And it's offensively stupid. It's a fairy tale. It's a tale to tell you to be lazy. It sucks. It's actually one of the dumbest statements that's ever been said. Actually, I think that's the essence of liberalism, to be honest with you. It's profoundly stupid and objectively disprovable. How do you get through it when you know you need change, but you also know you have a small amount of chance of ever getting any change? Well, first of all, that's not true. That's not true. There's a quote from Lenin that is my lodestar. He says, some weeks, some decades, weeks happen. Some weeks, decades happen. What that means is you'll have, it's punctuated equilibria, all right? Things will stay the same for a long time, seemingly just nothing changing. And then bam, you hit a tipping point and massive change that you or I don't even think is possible happens. There's a difference between making a prediction about the trajectory of history and absolving yourself of the obligation to participate in resistance, IMO. That's when I say the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. It depends on who is saying it. Like, I can see a context where if you're the head of a major, say, civil rights movement, and you've got millions of people pouring onto the streets, and you're seeing success as a statement of triumph, that makes sense. Like a statement of, like, if you're at the Civil Rights Act signing with LBJ and you're ending Jim Crow and you say the arc of history is long and it bends towards justice as a statement of victory, I have no problem with that. If you're a loser cuck who is sitting there in the White House as a lame duck for 6 years, it's a statement of cope. So, I think obviously it's highly contextual, but if any Democrat or liberal says it now, it's cope. All right, let's keep going.
Look, guys, everybody will beat up the Uvalde cops, and they deserve to be beat up rhetorically, right? But let's be honest, as we always tell you, it's in the police training. They tell them, and in this case, they might say, oh, look, no, wait, Jang, there's different training for hostage situations and there active shooter situations. But the most important part of the training that they never talk about in the press is take care of your own safety before anyone else's safety. And that's why they didn't go in. There's no excuses left.
Yeah, and look, that training conflicts with what the active shooter training indicates they're supposed to do, right?
That's right,
so
and they didn't do it.
Right, exactly. So you have the head of the Texas Public Safety Department saying, no, this is an active shooter situation. They should have went in immediately. But you're right in that we see this messaging and this training play out in real time when we cover every police brutality story, which is, what's the saying, Cenk? Better to be
judged by 12 than carried out by 6.
Exactly.
See, that to cops nationwide, that's the prime directive. That's why even in an active shooter with kids, and they hear and see him firing at the kids, they still don't go in because the prime directive is you're more important than any citizen.
Right.
Do not endanger yourself under any circumstances. And that is exactly what should be the opposite of what cops are trained to do, but instead all across the country. And by the way, guys, this is not just Uvalde cops. Almost every department in Texas was involved by the end, because remember, it took like an hour and 15 minutes. And so the Texas Rangers were there, the state cops were there, everybody was there, and they all chose not to go in. Why? Prime directive, cops' lives are more important than citizens' lives. Do not ever take a risk of your safety to save a citizen. And that's disgusting.
So I want to go to one more clip. You're about to watch a video where the cops, I guess, attempted to enter a classroom where the shooter was, and here's how that went down.
Judge orders redactions of his hands. Judge orders redaction of photos of Auburn police officer Jeff Nelson's tattoos. There it is! Holy shit! Rather be judged by 12 than carried by 8? I mean, I don't know how fat you are. It's supposed to be carried by 6. 8? I don't know any pallbearer that has 8. Incredible. He actually murdered someone too. He actually murdered someone. He is being judged by 12. Nelson shot and killed Jesse Sari after attempting to arrest him for jaywalking. He killed a guy for jaywalking. By the way, a made-up crime. Jaywalking was created so that we could have a car-dependent cities and make them unwalkable and unlivable. I mean, is there anything America gets right other than free refills? Maybe ice. Lots of ice and air conditioning. Because who likes to be hot? Not me. Cold drinks, baby. Cold drinks. Look, that cop runs away. Officers retreat to the hallway and take cover after shots are fired by the gunman. Again.
Where the cops, I guess, attempted to enter a classroom where the shooter was, and here's how that went down.
By the way, they all have ARs. They all have ARs. They all have body armor. They all have ARs. What more are you waiting for? They're all fat as fuck. No, this is coming from me. I'm the heaviest I've ever been, chat. Listen. I got a little bit, I've been, listen. It is what it is. I'm fat myself right now. But I'm not getting paid 100 grand to stand around. What are you running away for? More heavily armored officers continue to arrive, some with ballistic shields, ballistic helmet, body armor, ballistic shield, AR. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cops in this frame. What are you waiting for? 31 minutes later. 31 minutes later. The gunman is heard firing 4 more rounds. What are they doing? What the fuck are they doing?
Still opening fire and killing students. And you have, again, not one, not two, but
I don't like calling them students. They're little kids. They're elementary school kids. They're not students. They're making little turkeys with hand cutouts and shit. They're painting their faces to look like pumpkins. They're actual babies. They cut out the sounds of the children's screams for the videos. I honestly think it's bullshit. They should have released the screams. Here's a cop looking at his... First of all, he's got a fucking fat roll on the back of his head. Nice. He's looking at his Punisher screen. Punisher lock screen. I mean, if it were me and I get gunned down in a mass shooting, I want you to publish those fucking images of my bullet-riddled corpse. If a family member of mine is killed in a mass shooting, I'm going to release the images of their fucking bullet-riddled corpse. I am not going to keep that shit hidden. Don't let me die in vain. I want an open casket funeral if I am shot to death.
But dozens of cops on the scene. They're in the hallway. They hear the gunman opening fire and they're not doing anything. In fact, the first time they try, they hear the gunshots and they run away from the classroom. So a few other details we learned based on the surveillance footage. So at 12:21, which is 45 minutes.
Which is really amazing because with the shooting, you could, with your ears, locate exactly where the gunman is in the room. You would have the drop on the gunman then. He's pointing his gun somewhere else shooting, so he's probably not going to hear you come in over the sounds of his own guns. You'll know exactly where he is in the room. That's an advantage for you.
After police first arrived on the scene, 4 shots are heard from at least and at least a dozen officers move toward the classroom. That's the video that you just saw. An officer can be heard saying they're making entry, yet they do not. They did not enter the classroom. At 12:30, an officer wearing a helmet and a ballistic vest pauses to squirt hand sanitizer from a wall-mounted dispenser and rubs his hands together. Look, it could be a nervous tick, but it doesn't look good, especially in the full context of this situation where you have all these heavily armed cops there doing nothing. The imagery of one of
full body armor, ballistic helmet, AR-15s out the asshole. And the other thing to remind you, Chad, is at the same time, they're beating the shit out of parents. They're beating the shit out of parents outside. The parents are like, go in, save the kids. What are you doing? Parents had heard about the mass shooting, had left work, had driven to the school, and were like, can you go in? And they're beating and tasing and pepper spraying parents right now to keep them out.
Them putting hand sanitizer casually in his hands and rubbing them together is infuriating, to say the least.
Honestly, if I think this guy right here, we should be exposed. Who is this guy? Who is the bravely ran away guy? Who is the guy sprinting away, hiding his tears? We need to know who this guy is. We need to know who Sir Robin is. Every single cop, chubby boy here, all the retreaters. We need to know who their names are. They should be stripped. They should be fired. Why are they not? You know, if people want to be like, if cops want to get those discounts and they want people to give them free tickets to the local baseball game and people to say thank you for your service, sir, and treat them like they're some sort of fucking special snowflake, then you can't run away from babies being murdered. And if you do, you get to go to prison for the rest of your life. That's the deal. Don't like it? Quit.
Is infuriating, to say the least. At 12:50, a cadre of officers crouches outside the classroom. A burst of gunfire is heard and the video ends. Authorities have said a Border Patrol agent is the one who ended up killing the gunman. And I want to go to this final graphic that shows what the scene was like 77 minutes later. Officers finally breach the unlocked classroom and kill the gunman. 77 minutes later.
Okay, guys, you saw in the video shots fired at kids inside the school and the cops don't go in. They're inside the school and they don't go in. That's unacceptable under any definition. You'd have to be a monster to think that was acceptable. Now, let me tell you who they are. Those monsters who did think it was acceptable. The Uvalde Police Department, the Uvalde County Sheriff's Department, the Texas Department of Public Safety. These are all the cops that were on the scene. Texas Rangers, US Border Patrol, and US Marshal Services. I'll let the Border Patrol off because they're the guys who actually went in at the end and got him, okay? Everyone else, they all stood there. All of their commanding officers told them, prime directive, who gives a damn about the kids? Save your.
Got into the other day without two friends talking about how the cops involved with this should all be immediately fired, but likely to how badly they'll be defended. Their takeaway was, yeah, unions are the issue. We shouldn't have unions. Cops shouldn't have unions, number one, because they have authority to use violence. But secondly, they can be fired for cause. Just because you have a union doesn't mean you can never be fired. If you're a union United Airlines pilot and you show up to work pissed drunk, you get fired. Like, what the fuck? Do people think union contracts make you unfireable? Like, what? Their position were that all unions are evil. They were insane. It sounds like they're rich. Fucks to me. This is the Uvalde Police Department's new fucking motto, or song rather.
He's buggered off. So he has, he's scarping.
Breaks the robin, run away.
No.
Bravely ran away.
I didn't.
Yourself, don't harm your, don't take any risk with your health or safety or your clean hands.
To be fair, they were willing to do something, which was handcuffed parents who were demanding that they do something about the active shooter.
And if you're wondering, wait, why don't we already have an exact account of what happened? There's all those cops there. They all know what happened, right? The reason we don't have a good account of it and it's leaking out little by little and not from the authorities is because they all want to cover their ass.
Yeah.
So, and that's almost all the cops in Texas.
Including the DA who
Right.
didn't want that video to be released.
Of course, so all the cops are saying, no. We don't want you to find out what actually happened. And they're centering on a scapegoat, and it looks like it's the police chief in Uvalde. It's not to say that he didn't do something wrong, but I'll tell you ahead of time what's gonna happen is everybody's gonna say, it was him, not us. Because in situations like this, they need a scapegoat. Otherwise, people find out what the reality is, which is that cops are trained to be cowards and to protect themselves and not you.
Are you watching the stream unsubbed? You're making income.